Chris Fusco sat down at the Love is Blind Season 10 reunion tonight, and every single thing he was hoping nobody would bring up, they brought it up. All of it. The Pilates comment, the CrossFit comment, the 48 hours he went missing, the strip club photos, the cast party where he tried to hit on Bree while she was engaged to Connor, the deleted scene where he told Jessica she was perfect right before he told her she was not his type, the public statement he released after the show aired that somehow made everything worse, and the hot mic moment from the reunion itself where he was caught saying something about Bree that Connor heard and reacted to on camera. This man came to the reunion with longer hair and a boot heel that gave him a little extra height, and somehow still walked out smaller than when he walked in. Tonight, we are going through every single thing Chris Fusco did on Love is Blind Season 10, every moment the reunion held him accountable for, and why the internet has unanimously decided that he is one of the most genuinely disliked cast members this franchise has ever produced. We are also talking about Jessica Barrett, because she deserves her own full segment, because she is an infectious disease physician who wore what the internet is already calling a revenge dress to the reunion and walked in like someone who has done the work and is fully at peace with everything that happened. This is the full story. Let us get into it. First, let me give you the complete Chris Fusco timeline from the beginning, because to understand why tonight hit the way it did, you need to understand the full sequence of events, and not just the Pilates clip that went viral. Chris is 33 years old. He is an account manager from Ohio, and in the pods, his connection with Jessica Barrett was described by both of them as one of the strongest of the season. They were in sync, they communicated well, they laughed together, and when Chris proposed to Jessica, it looked like a genuine, enthusiastic yes from someone who had found exactly what he came in looking for. Jessica Barrett is 39 years old. She is an infectious disease physician. She is objectively accomplished, clearly intelligent, and described consistently by the rest of the cast as one of the most genuinely likable people in the group. By every measure of what the pods are supposed to do, Chris and Jessica worked. They built a real emotional connection through a wall without physical appearances involved. The experiment did what it was designed to do. And then, they left the pods and went to Cabo. And everything changed. After the trip to Mexico, Chris went missing for approximately 48 hours. No contact with Jessica, no explanation. He was just gone. And when he came back, Jessica, completely reasonably, wanted to understand what had happened. That conversation is what led to the Pilates comment, because instead of explaining where he was or why he disappeared, Chris turned the conversation into a confession about physical attraction. He told Jessica that since meeting her in person, he had been struggling with the chemistry between them. And then he said, in a direct quote that has now been heard by millions of people, that in his normal life, he dates people who do CrossFit and Pilates every day. He followed that up by saying it also comes down to lifestyle, that he had been out skiing that day and wanted someone to do that with him, and that he was not sure Jessica was going to be that type of person. Jessica is a petite, conventionally attractive, accomplished woman. The Pilates comment was not a statement about fitness. It was a statement about how Chris viewed her as a person relative to what he thought he deserved. And the way he delivered it, with his head thrown back in irritation when she responded with hurt, as though he was the one being wronged in that moment, is what turned him from a mildly frustrating cast member into a fully viral villain. Jessica responded with one of the best lines of the entire season. She said if her body is not good enough for him, she is never going to beg anyone to love her. And then she walked, with her head held high, which she later told Glamour magazine was a very deliberate choice. She said Chris did not deserve her real reaction to that moment. She gave him the composed version instead. Now let us talk about what happened after the breakup, because this is where things escalated from bad to genuinely inexcusable. After Jessica ended their engagement, Chris went to a strip club and posted photos of himself there on social media. The timeline of those photos relative to their breakup conversation was immediately noticed by the internet. Nobody missed that. And then at the cast mixer, the group event where all the engaged couples came together, Chris approached Bree, who was engaged to Connor, and attempted to have what multiple people who watched it described as a seduction attempt. He told her he would take her to the Four Seasons, with her fiancé in the same building. There is also a deleted scene that Netflix released in the days before the reunion that showed Chris in Cabo, right before they left Mexico to go back to Ohio, begging Jessica not to switch up on him. He told her he thought she was perfect. He held her face. He was affectionate and sweet in a way that made the Pilates conversation that came shortly after feel even more jarring in retrospect. Jessica talked about this on the Off the Vine podcast. She said the reality of what happened between them was very, very different from what was actually shown on the series, which means what made it to air was already a lot, and what did not make it to air was apparently even more. And then Chris released a public statement after the show aired, which he probably should not have done, because the statement described his comments as not trying to be malicious, but understanding they may have come off that way, which is the kind of non-apology that tends to generate more backlash than the original incident did. The internet was not impressed. So that is the full context walking into the reunion tonight. Nick and Vanessa Lachey took Chris to task directly. In the sneak peek Netflix released before the episode, Nick confronted him specifically about the CrossFit and Pilates comments. And Chris, sitting there with longer hair and the slightly different energy of a man who has had several months to think about how this is going to go, said he is not proud of a lot of those moments. Not proud of a lot of those moments. Not an apology, not an acknowledgement of specifically what was wrong, a general expression of retrospective discomfort. Jessica's response to all of it was exactly what you would expect from someone who has fully processed the experience and moved on. She sat nowhere near Chris at the reunion. She said the reality of what happened was very different from what was shown on camera. She was composed, she was clear, and she looked extraordinary doing it. The revenge dress conversation is real. Multiple outlets covered what Jessica wore to the reunion specifically because of the contrast it created. An infectious disease physician who got told she was not fit enough by a man who is reportedly 5 feet 6 inches tall, walking into that reunion room dressed like someone who has nothing left to prove and knows it. The internet clocked it immediately. Now, let us talk about the hot mic moment, because this is the detail that is generating almost as much conversation as the original Pilates comment. During the reunion filming, Chris was caught on a hot microphone saying something about Bree. The exact quote has not been fully confirmed, but the reports indicate it was complimentary in a way that was completely inappropriate, given everything that had already happened between them during the season. The cast party, the Four Seasons comment, all of it. Connor heard it, Connor reacted. And that moment is going to be one of the more uncomfortable segments of the reunion episode, because Connor is one of the genuinely well-liked people in this cast. He communicated openly with Bree throughout the season, even when she was pulling away. He handled a complicated situation with more patience and emotional maturity than most people in his position would have. And being put in a position where he has to sit across from the man who hit on his fiancée at a reunion after a hot mic catches that same man saying something about his now wife is not a situation Connor asked for. This is also why the Bree and Connor courthouse marriage storyline hits differently in the context of Chris's behavior. Bree and Connor's relationship was directly destabilized by Chris's interference during the cast mixer. His comments to Bree planted doubt that grew into the breakup we saw on screen. And then the cameras went away, and Bree and Connor found their way back to each other anyway, and got married at a courthouse in Ohio before the show even finished airing. Chris went to a strip club and hit on an engaged woman. Bree and Connor went to Hamilton County and got a marriage certificate. The contrast does not require any additional commentary. Let me also talk about something that has not gotten enough attention in the Chris conversation: the maturity gap this season revealed. A piece that went up on a major outlet this week described Love is Blind Season 10 as a depressing reminder of the gender gap when it comes to emotional maturity. They said most of the men in the show appeared to have the emotional capacity of people who are not ready to be in adult relationships, while most of the women behaved like actual adults. And they named Chris as the clearest example of that gap in the entire season. Because here is what the show actually documented with Chris and Jessica: a woman who is a practicing physician, who has built a career that requires extraordinary emotional regulation and intellectual precision, who communicated with patience and vulnerability throughout the process, being matched with a man who responded to her genuine feelings with irritation and then disappeared to a strip club. And then he told the women at the mixer that his time with Jessica was the worst physical experience he had ever had. He said that to a group of people who knew her, while she was somewhere in the same building. There is a word for behavior that is specifically designed to make someone feel small because their confidence and accomplishments make you feel inadequate. And the reunion was where that word finally got said in public, on stage, with cameras rolling. Hot take time, and I am being completely direct. Chris's reunion appearance was the definition of a non-accountability moment. He grew out his hair. He wore height-boosting shoes. He sat on that stage and said he was not proud of some of those moments, without specifying what moments, without naming what was specifically wrong about his behavior, and without offering anything to Jessica that resembled a genuine acknowledgement of how his actions affected her. Lachey pushed, the audience pushed, and Chris gave just enough to avoid a complete meltdown on camera while giving nothing that actually required him to be honest about who he was during that process. Jessica, on the other hand, gave the perfect reunion performance. Not because she performed, because she did not perform at all. She sat there and told the truth. She said the reality was different from what was shown. She did not over-explain. She did not beg for understanding. She was fully, completely, composedly herself. And that is so much harder to do than it looks when you are sitting 3 feet from someone who hurt you in front of millions of people. Who came out of tonight better? Jessica. By a distance that is not close. Drop this in the comments right now. What was the specific Chris moment this season that made you the maddest? The Pilates comment? The strip club photos? The mixer conversation with Bree? The public statement that made everything worse? Because the internet has been ranking these in real time for 2 weeks, and I want to know where this audience lands. So here is the full Chris and Jessica story after tonight. A connection in the pods that felt real. A Cabo trip where something shifted. A 48-hour disappearance. A comment about Pilates and CrossFit that broke the internet. A strip club. A cast mixer where he hit on someone else's fiancée. A deleted scene where he told her she was perfect right before he told her she was not his type. A public statement that made everything worse. A reunion where he said he was not proud of some of those moments. And a hot mic that caught him saying something about Bree that Connor had to sit there and hear. And on the other side of all of that, Jessica Barrett, infectious disease physician, revenge dress, head held high, reality very different from what was shown, moving on completely. This season gave the audience a lot of villains, but it only gave us one who managed to be this comprehensively, specifically, meticulously documented in his awfulness across 12 episodes, a public statement, a deleted scene, and a reunion hot mic moment. The Pilates community has been avenged. Jessica deserved better. And tonight, for at least 90 minutes on a Netflix reunion stage, she got it. Like this video if it helped you process everything that happened tonight. Subscribe if you are new because we cover every episode of this season and we are going all the way to the end. And I will see you in the next one.